When my only daughter told me she had secretly transferred everything I owned into her name, I collapsed right there on my kitchen floor. 3 days later, I was standing outside my own home while a stranger changed the locks. That's when I realized that motherhood is like planting a garden for 40 years, only to watch someone else harvest every last flower. If you're seeing this, hit subscribe and tell me what state you're from. Because trust me, this story twists more than a tornado in Texas. E never só it come. Not Clara. Not my sweet girl. That Sunday morning started like any other. I was sipping my coffee on the porch, watching cardinals flit around the bird feeder Robert had installed before cancer took him 2 years ago. The phone rang, and I expected it to be Mrs. Holloway from church asking if I could bring an extra casserole for the potluck. Instead, it was my neighbor, Gladys. Martha, have you seen the paper today? Her voice had that tone, the one people use when they're about to deliver bad news but are secretly thrilled to be the messenger. No, why? There's an announcement. Your Clara, she got married yesterday. My coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand. That's impossible. She would have told me. It is right here in black and white. Clara and Samuel Jenkins. Private ceremony. Samuel. The man she'd been dating for just 6 months. The one with the too white smile and the fancy car I couldn't identify. The one who always looked at our family home like he was mentally measuring the square footage. I hung up without saying goodbye and drove straight to Clara's apartment across town. She wasn't there. I called her cell phone 17 times. Nothing. When she finally called back that evening, her voice was different. Harder somehow. Mom, I was going to tell you tomorrow. Sam and I decided to make it official. We're actually on our mini honeymoon right now. Clara, how could you not tell me? I'm your mother. There was a pause, then her voice came through coldly clinical. There's something else you should know. The papers Dad left, we've executed the transfer of the properties. It's all been handled legally. What transfer? What papers? Dad left everything to me, Mom. The house, the rental properties, the investments. Each is all in my name now. Well, mine and Sam's. Script part separator ===. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest. Robert had left everything to Clara? The home we'd built together over 40 years? The rental properties we'd scraped and saved to buy as our retirement safety net? That can't be right, I whispered, my voice trembling. Your father and I agreed everything would stay in both our names. Well, he changed his mind before he died, Clara said, her voice so distant she might as well have been calling from another planet. The lawyer has all the documentation. It's done, Mom. I clutched the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. When were you planning to tell me that I don't own my own home? Don't be dramatique. Nothing has to change. You can stay there as long as you want. She paused. We just need to formalize things. Sam's drawing up a rental agreement. A rental agreement. For my own house? My voice had risen to a shrill pitch I barely recognized. It's just business, Mom. Sam says we need everything legally documented. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced through the rooms of my house, apparently no longer my house, touching the walls, the door frames, the windowsills. 40 years of memories. The height marks on the kitchen doorway where we'd measured Clara growing up. The dent in the living room wall from when Robert had tried to move the sofa by himself. The garden I'd planted and tended, rose by rose, bush by bush. The next morning, I called Janice, my oldest friend who'd retired from her legal secretary job last year. Martha, this sounds fishy, she said after I explained. Robert would never have done this without telling you. You need a lawyer. Today. By noon, I was sitting in the office of Alan Prescott, a stern-faced attorney with kind eyes. He frowned deeply as I told my story, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Mrs. Wilson, I don't like what I'm hearing. Have you seen this will they're referring to? Script part separator ===. No, I haven't seen anything. Robert and I had wills drawn up together 15 years ago. We left everything to each other, then to Clara after we were both gone. Mr. Prescott tapped his pen against the desk. We need to see the documentation they're claiming exists. This isn't just about property, It's about your financial security. Azidrov home, my phone hung. Clara. Mom, Sam and I have been talking. We think it would be best if you started looking for a smaller place. The house is really too big for one person, and we could get good money if we sell now. The car swerved as my hand shook. I pulled over, unable to process what I was hearing. You want me to leave my home? The words felt foreign in my mouth. It's not practical for you anymore, Clara said, her voice rehearsed. We found some nice senior apartments across town. I'm 63, Clara. I'm not ready for senior apartments. We're just thinking about your future, Mom. No, you're thinking about your bank account, I snapped, surprising myself with the heat in my voice. There was silence on the line. Then, coolly, you have 30 days to decide. After that, we'll need to take more formal steps. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Official notice to vacate within 30 days. At the bottom, Clara's signature, and beside it, Samuel's, a signature I'd never seen before but would come to hate. I called Mr. Prescott immediately. They can't do this, can they? I asked, my voice breaking. Not if we can prove fraud or coercion, he said. Mrs. Wilson, did your husband show any signs of cognitive decline before his death? Any medication that might have affected his judgment? A memory flashed. Robert, confused about the day of the week during his last months. The painkillers that sometimes made him foggy. Yes, I whispered. Yes, he did. Script part separator, Mr. Prescott leaned forward. Then we have grounds to challenge. I'm filing an emergency injunction today to stop any further transfers or actions against you. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. That hope dimmed when I got home and found Samuel's gleaming BMW in my driveway. Clara and Samuel were inside my house, measuring the living room windows. What are you doing? I asked, standing in the doorway of my own home like a stranger. Samuel turned, flashing that too-perfect smile. Just getting measurements for the new owners. We have a couple very interested. New owners. I felt dizzy. You're already selling my house? Mom, Clara sighed, not meeting my eyes. We talked about this. It's not practical for you anymore. You talked. I never agreed. I stepped closer to my daughter, searching her face for any trace of the child I'd raised. Clara, why are you doing this? What happened to you? Samuel stepped between us. Your daughter is making sound financial decisions, Martha. Something Robert obviously valued, since he left everything in her capable hands. Show me this will, I demanded. Show me where Robert supposedly cut me out of everything we built together. Clara glanced at Samuel, something uncertain flickering across her face. The paperwork is with our attorney, Samuel said smoothly. But if you insist on making this difficult, we can accelerate the timeline. The market's hot right now. My lawyer has filed an injunction, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You can't sell anything until this is resolved. Samuel's smile hardened. An injunction? That's unfortunate. He checked his watch. We have an appointment. We'll let ourselves out. After they left, I noticed Robert's study door was open. The filing cabinet where we kept all our important documents had been cleared out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise downstairs. Grabbing my robe, I crept down to find a stranger changing my locks. Ma'am, I have authorization, he said, showing me paperwork with Clara's signature. New owners taking possession. There are no new owners, I protested. There's an injunction. He shrugged. I just do what I'm told, ma'am. Standing in my yard in my bathrobe under the cold moonlight, watching a stranger lock me out of my own home, I made a promise to myself. This was far from over. Script part separator, I called Mr. Prescott at 3:30 a.m. from my car, where I'd retreated after the locksmith left. By dawn, we had an emergency hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. Judge Harriet Monroe was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who listened to both sides with narrowed eyes. Clara sat beside Samuel and their attorney, a slick man named Gregory Peters who kept smoothing his tie as he spoke. Your Honor, this is simply a family misunderstanding, Peters argued. The late Mr. Wilson made his wishes clear. All properties were to transfer to his daughter upon his death. Mr. Prescott stood. Your Honor, we have serious concerns about the validity of this alleged new will. Mrs. Wilson was never notified of any changes, and Mr. Wilson was on heavy medication during his final months. The judge turned to Clara. Young lady, did your father specifically tell you he was changing his will to exclude your mother? Clara's eyes darted to Samuel before answering. He wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. That's not what I asked, Judge Monroe said sharply. I watched my daughter squirm, and despite everything, my heart ached for her. She looked trapped. Until this court reviews all documentation, Judge Monroe declared, I'm issuing a temporary stay. The property remains in status quo, and Mrs. Wilson retains residency. No assets are to be transferred, no locks changed. She fixed Samuel with a stern look. And sir, if I hear of any more middle-of-the-night locksmith visits, you'll be explaining yourself to me personally. As we left the courtroom, I tried to approach Clara, but Samuel steered her away. The look she gave me over her shoulder wasn't hatred, it was fear. Something's not right, I told Mr. Prescott. That's not my daughter in there. I agree, he said. And I'm going to find out everything I can about your new son-in-law. Script part separator ===. That evening, I returned to my house with a police escort to ensure I could enter. The officer watched as I used the spare key I'd hidden under a garden gnome years ago, one small victory when the locksmith had missed it. Inside, he found chaos. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered. They'd been searching for something. In the kitchen, I noticed Robert's old address book was missing from its drawer. The small safe in our closet had been pried open, though it had only contained costume jewelry. Mrs. Wilson, the officer said gently, you should document anything missing. This could be important for your case. I nodded, numb. My home felt violated, not just legally but physically now. The next morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it cautiously to find Janice holding a casserole dish and a determined expression. I'm staying with you until this blows over, she announced, pushing past me. And I've brought reinforcements. Behind her stood Ellen from my garden club and Thomas, Robert's old colleague from the university. Both carried grocery bags. Martha, this isn't right, Thomas said, his voice gruff with emotion. Robert would never do this to you. As they settled in, making coffee and arranging themselves at my kitchen table like a war council, I felt tears threaten for the first time since this began. I don't understand what happened to Clara, I admitted. She was never materialistic before. It's that husband, Ellen said darkly. Thomas has been doing some digging. Thomas cleared his throat. Samuel Jenkins isn't who he says he is. His real name is Samuel Jennings. He's been involved in 3 other property disputes in the last 5 years, always with older women who had assets. My blonde hunkold. He's done this before? Thomas nodded grimly. And there's more. He was briefly investigated for elder financial abuse in Arizona, but charges were dropped when the victim, a widow, suddenly recanted her story. Script part separator ===. The revelation about Samuel's past hit me like a physical blow. Clara had fallen for a predator, one who specialized in exactly our situation. We need to tell Clara, I insisted, reaching for my phone. Thomas placed his hand over mine. Martha, we need to be strategic. If she's under his influence, confronting her directly could push her further away. I knew he was right, but the maternal instinct to protect my child was overwhelming. So what do? We build a case, Janice said, her legal secretary experience showing. Mr. Prescott needs ammunition. That afternoon, while my friends kept watch at the house, I met with Mr. Prescott to share Thomas's findings. He immediately began typing on his computer. This changes everything, he said, eyes on the screen. I'm filing subpoenas for records from those other cases. If we can establish a pattern. What about Robert's will? I asked. The real one. I've contacted every law firm he might have used, Mr. Prescott said. So far, no one has record of a new will. But here's what concerns me. The document they're claiming exists was supposedly witnessed by a Howard Mills and a Patricia Dawson. The names me nothing to me. Robert never mentioned them. Exactly. And I can't find records of either person in this county. Achou Hanfrumi. They're fabricated. Mr. Prescott nodded grimly. I believe so. But proving it requires finding the original document to examine the signatures. How do we do that? I'm requesting a formal discovery process, but, he hesitated. Mrs. Wilson, time is working against us. The longer they have to cover their tracks, the harder this gets. I left his office feeling the weight of urgency. Samuel wasn't just trying to take my house. He was systematically erasing my life, my history with Robert. And he was using my own daughter to do it. Script part separator ===. When I returned home, I found a business card tucked in my door. Marcus Reed, investigativo reporter, Westlake Tribune. A handwritten note on the back. Interested in your story. Call me. I hesitated. Going public felt extreme, but Samuel had already escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Call him, Thomas urged when I showed him the card. The more eyes on this situation, the better. Marcus Reed turned out to be a serious young man with intense eyes and a notebook always at the ready. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Mrs. Wilson, I've been tracking Samuel Jennings for months, he explained, sliding a folder across the table. You're not his first target, but you might be the one who finally stops him. Inside were newspaper clippings from 3 different states. Each featured eerily similar stories: vulnerable widows, sudden marriages, disputed assets. And in 2 photos, partially obscured but unmistakable, was Samuel. Why hasn't he been arrested? I demanded. He's careful. Uses different names. Moves between jurisdictions. And his victims are often too embarrassed or intimidated to pursue charges. Marcus leaned forward. But you're fighting back. That makes your story different. This isn't just about me, I said, my voice breaking. He has my daughter. Marcus nodded grimly. That's his new twist. Using family members to access assets makes everything messier legally. The next day, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mom, it's me. Can we meet alone? Please don't tell anyone. Especially Sam. My heart raced. Clara wanted to meet. After weeks of avoiding me, speaking only through lawyers, my daughter was reaching out. It could be a trap, Janice warned when I showed her. Or she's finally seeing through him, Ellen countered. I tested back, tomorrow. 10 horas de Botanical Gardens where we used to go. That night, I barely slept. Would Clara actually come? And if she did, what would I find? My daughter, or a stranger wearing her face? Script part separator ===. The botanical gardens were quiet that Tuesday morning. I arrived early, choosing a bench near the Rose Pavilion where Clara and I had spent countless Saturday mornings during her childhood. I brought her here for the first time when she was just 6, her small hand in mine as she marveled at the colors and scents. At 10:05, I spotted her, walking hesitantly down the gravel path, glancing over her shoulder. She looked thinner, dark circles under her eyes. Mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to embrace her, to hold her like when she was small, but the distance between us felt vast. Clara. She sat beside me, leaving space between us. I don't have much time. He thinks I'm at a spa appointment. Why, Clara? Why are you doing this? Her hands trembled in her lap. I didn't know it would go this far. Sam said it was just estate planning, making sure everything was properly managed. Then suddenly we were married, and there were documents. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I signed things without reading them carefully. Did you know they changed the locks on me? That they're trying to sell my home? She flinched. Sam said you were being difficult. That we needed to force the issue. Clara, Samuel isn't who you think he is. His real name is Samuel Jennings. He's done this before. Her face went pale. What are you talking about? He targets women with assets, usually widows. There are cases in 3 states. No, she whispered, but I could see doubt creeping in. He loves me. Does he? Or does he love what you can give him access to? She stood abruptly. I have to go. He checks my phone, tracks where I am. Clara, please. We can fix this together. She hesitated, then pressed something into my hand. A small key. Dad's safety deposit box at First National. Box 742. There's something you should see. She turned to leave, then looked back. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll make this right somehow. Before I could respond, she hurried away, looking over her shoulder with every step. I clutched the key, hope and dread warring in my chest. Whatever Robert had left in that box might be the key to everything, or another devastating blow. Script part separator, I drove straight to First National Bank, the key clutched so tightly in my palm that it left an impression. The bank manager escorted me to the vault, her expression neutral but curious. Safety deposit boxes held secrets. Everyone who worked in a bank knew that. Take as much time as you need, Mrs. Wilson, she said, leaving me alone in the small private room. Box 742 opened with a metallic click that echoed in the silent room. Inside was a single manila envelope, sealed, with Martha, open only if necessary, written in Robert's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was a notarized letter dated just 2 weeks before Robert died, and underneath it, a will. Not the one Clara and Samuel claimed existed, but one I'd never seen before. My dearest Martha, Robert's letter began. If you're reading this, something has gone very wrong. I've become concerned about Clara's relationship with Samuel. There's something not right about him, something predatory I can't quite prove. The letter detailed Robert's suspicions, how Samuel had asked probing questions about our finances, how he'd noticed Clara changing, becoming secretive. Most damning of all, Robert had hired a private investigator in his final weeks who'd uncovered Samuel's previous identity and history. I've created this new will as protection, Robert wrote. It places everything in a trust that Clara cannot access until she's been divorced from Samuel for at least 1 year. If she's still with him when you find this, Martha, I fear she's being manipulated or coerced. Tears streamed down my face as I read Robert's final gift to me, not just financial security, but validation. He'd seen the danger coming, had tried to protect us both. There was one more item in the envelope, a business card for Elaine Winters, private investigator, with a handwritten note, all evidence on file. I called Mr. Prescott immediately. I found it, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Robert left U.S. Fellini. Script part separator, Mr. Prescott arrived at the bank within 30 minutes, his face lighting up as he reviewed the documents. This changes everything, Mrs. Wilson. This will is properly executed, notarized, and dated after the one they're claiming. And Robert's letter detailing his concerns about undue influence. This is exactly what we need. We worked quickly. Mr. Prescott filed the new will with the court that afternoon, along with a motion for an emergency hearing. Meanwhile, I contacted Elaine Winters, the private investigator. I wondered when you'd call, she said when we met at her office the next day. Your husband was worried sick about your daughter. Elaine's file was comprehensive. Surveillance photos of Samuel meeting with known scam artists, background reports showing his pattern of changing identities, even recorded conversations where he discussed targeting Clara to access our assets. Robert hired me just before his condition worsened, Elaine explained. When he realized he wouldn't be around to protect you both, he wanted documentation. Armed with this evidence, we requested police involvement. Detective James Morgan reviewed the file with grave concern. This crosses into criminal territory, he confirmed. Financial elder abuse, identity fraud, falsifying legal documents. We'll need statements from you and, if possible, your daughter. The most difficult call was to Clara. When I explained what we'd discovered, there was a long silence. He's standing right here, Mom, she finally whispered. I can't talk. My blood ran cold. Clara, are you safe? Another pause. Not really. Detective Morgan was already calling for patrol cars before I hung up. The confrontation at Clara's apartment was chaotic. Samuel tried to flee out the back door, only to run directly into 2 officers. Clara, shaking and pale, fell into my arms. I'm so sorry, she sobbed against my shoulder. I believed him. He kept saying Dad wanted me to take control, that you couldn't manage alone. When I started questioning things, he became different. Controlling. Script part separator, As Samuel was led away in handcuffs, shouting about lawsuits and his rights, Detective Morgan approached us gently. "We'll need statements from both of you. And Mrs. Wilson," he turned to me, "you should know that we found several forged documents in the apartment, including what appears to be falsified power of attorney paperwork." Clara's face crumpled. "I didn't sign those. I swear, Mom." "I believe you," I said, holding her hand. "We'll sort this out." The next few days were a whirlwind. Clara moved back into my house, her childhood home, while Samuel remained in jail, unable to make the substantial bail set by Judge Monroe. Clara and I stayed up late into the night, painful truths spilling out between us. How Samuel had gradually isolated her from friends, how he'd planted seeds of doubt about my mental capacity, how he'd convinced her that the property transfers were just formalities to protect the family assets. He kept saying Dad talked to him privately, Clara admitted, shame coloring her voice. "That Dad didn't trust you with finances. I should have known better." It hurt to hear, but I understood manipulation. "It's not your fault," I told her, though we both knew healing our relationship would take time. Mr. Prescott called with news that the court had invalidated all the fraudulent transfers. My home, the rental properties, everything was being restored to my name. But the greatest victory came from an unexpected source. Marcus Reed's investigative article hit the front page. Serial scammer targets widow and daughter. The story detailed Samuel's history across multiple states, connecting dots that local police had missed. Script part separator ===. Within days, 3 more victims came forward, women who had either lost property to Samuel or narrowly escaped his schemes. The prosecutor's office announced they were building a case that could put him away for decades. The preliminary hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Clara and I arrived at the courthouse together, both nervous but determined. Samuel, now in an orange jumpsuit instead of his designer suits, wouldn't meet our eyes. "The state intends to pursue multiple felony charges," the prosecutor announced. "Financial elder abuse, fraud, falsifying legal documents, identity theft, and conspiracy." Samuel's attorney requested bail reduction, which Judge Monroe promptly denied. Given the defendant's history of assuming false identities and fleeing jurisdictions, he remains a flight risk. As we left the courtroom, a small group of women approached us, gray-haired, dignified, with fire in their eyes. "Samuel's previous victims. Thank you for stopping him," said one, squeezing my hand. "I lost everything and was too ashamed to fight back. He took my retirement, my dignity," added another. "But seeing him in handcuffs gives me some peace." We formed an unlikely sisterhood that day, women who had been targeted by the same predator, now finding strength together. We exchanged phone numbers, promised to support each other through the coming trial. Back home, Clara helped me replant the garden Samuel had partially dug up in his search for hidden valuables. As we worked side by side, she asked hesitantly, "Do you think you can ever forgive me, Mom?" I paused, hands deep in the soil. "I'm already working on it. But trust takes time to rebuild." She nodded, understanding this was neither a yes nor a no, but something more complex, like everything in life worth having. That evening, I found Robert's old fishing hat in the hall closet and held it to my face, inhaling the faint scent that still clung to it. "You saw it coming," I whispered to the empty room. "You protected us even after you were gone." The trial stretched through summer and into fall. Samuel maintained his innocence, but the evidence mounted against him. Bank records showed systematic transfers of funds. Handwriting experts confirmed forged signatures. Former associates testified about his schemes. Throughout it all, Clara sat beside me in the courtroom, her hand in mine. "The jury will now present their verdict," announced the bailiff on a crisp October morning. I held my breath as the foreman stood. "On all counts, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. Samuel's face twisted with rage as officers led him away. He'd face 15 years minimum. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters gathered as the prosecutor made her statement. Justice was served today. Samuel Jennings preyed on vulnerable women, but his reign of deception is over. A repórter trouxe microfone tovar-me. "Mrs. Wilson, how does it feel to be vindicated?" I paused, finding my voice. "This isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been manipulated by someone they trusted." I hope our story encourages others to come forward. That evening, Clara and I hosted dinner for everyone who stood by us: Janice, Thomas, Ellen, Mr. Prescott, Detective Morgan, Marcus Reed, and Elaine Winters. We toasted Robert's foresight and our renewed bonds. To new beginnings, Clara said, raising her glass. Later, as our guests departed, Clara lingered in the doorway of her old bedroom. Would it be okay if I stayed a while longer? I'm not ready to be on my own yet. This will always be your home, I said, realizing I meant it completely. 6 months later, I established the Wilson Family Foundation with part of Robert's estate. Our mission: providing legal support to victims of financial exploitation. Clara serves as executive director, her experience making her uniquely qualified to recognize the warning signs. Sometimes in life, you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. My daughter and I found our way back to each other through the darkness. And Robert, my beloved husband, protected us from beyond, reminding me that love, real love, always finds a way to endure. As I tend my garden now, watching new blooms emerge, I remember that life, like these flowers, requires patience, care, and sometimes a little pruning to grow into something beautiful again.